Today we're learning on thyroid emergencies. But as I've said before, even before you learn the abnormal, we need to learn normal first. So very quickly, we will brush through what is normal and then we move to abnormal. Okay? Now, when we talk about thyroid emergencies, when we talk about thyroid hormones first. Okay? Thyroid hormones. Why we need thyroid hormones? Anyone?
Metabolism.
Good, metabolism. But why do we need this increased metabolism? Can't we just have a baseline metabolism? Why sometimes we have thyroid hormones being secreted to increase our metabolism? In what kind of state you need an increased metabolism? Stress. Correct. Stress. Huh? You go out with you message your girlfriend, so long, oh, I love you, sayang, everything, oh, this one, you are the moons and the stars and the whatever, the clouds la, sea la, all that. And what your girlfriend reply you? K. That's very stressful, isn't it? Isn't it? K. I don't understand. It doesn't hurt so much to just put the O in front of the K. Reply K. So stress. Okay. What are the certain conditions of stress that needs us to have increased metabolism? Why in stress do we need increased metabolism?
More
Energy. Energy for what? Yes, true. Increased metabolism, increased energy. Increased energy for stress. But in stress, why do we need this increased energy for?
Fight condition.
Yes, to a certain extent. Because when you are stressed, our body perceives that there is a danger that's coming. Alright? Our body doesn't know that it's because of exam stress. Our body just thinks that we are stressed because of something. Okay? And it puts us into a primitive state where we need to fight or flight. Alright? So because of that, your body starts preparing itself to handle stress. So if the acute event comes, then you'll be prepared for it. I'll give you a good example. Okay, but even before that, what is the difference between thyroid hormone? Okay, what kind of hormone is thyroid hormone? It's a catabolic hormone, right? Stress hormone. What other stress hormones you know of? Cortisol, correct. What else?
Growth hormone.
Okay, growth hormone. Catecholamines. Okay, catecholamines such as your adrenaline and noradrenaline. Okay, people always get confused regarding this cortisol, thyroid hormones and catecholamines, adrenaline and noradrenaline, or epinephrine and norepinephrine. How do they tie in together? Okay, in stress. Okay, if you were to view a 10-kilometer race, for example. So you are at the start of the race. Your body is preparing for stress. Okay? So, the whole stress journey is 10 kilometers. The last 100 meters is the most important part. Because the last 100 meters determines whether you win or you lose. Correct or not? So, from the first kilometer, from the start of the journey until the last 100 meters, to prepare and prime your body for the stress that you're going to face. Because when you are going to run, you're going to need a lot of energy. Correct? You need a lot of energy. You need your body to be able to produce a lot of sugar. And at the same time, you need your body to also respond to stress well. Correct? So because of that, that is why your body has thyroid hormones and cortisol to prepare you for the oncoming stress, for the incoming stress. The last 100 meters, where everything boils down to that moment, is where your surge of catecholamines come in. Okay? Catecholamines can come out throughout, but the surge of catecholamines come in throughout the last moment there. So to put it simply, thyroid hormones and cortisol prepare you for stress. But when the acute event hits, catecholamines will be the primary responder for stress. Okay, now, why can't we just depend on catecholamine? Why is it we need thyroid hormone and cortisol to prepare us for the long term, and then short term we use catecholamines? Why? Why is this? Catecholamines are short acting, and another problem is they are not in abundance. You can actually run out of these catecholamines. They are small in amount. So that is why this comes out only in the acute events. For example, you have an exam 1 month from now. Okay? You have an exam 1 month from now. So now you're already having sleepless nights thinking about the exam. Right? So your body is preparing for stress. So this is where your thyroid hormone, you have increased sweating, tremors, you sleep not enough, bathe not wet, isn't it? Okay? So because of that, your body prepares you for stress. You have a surge of thyroid hormone and cortisol. How cortisol responds for stress is different. Okay? We will learn that in some other class. Then when you're sitting down and writing the exam, that is where your catecholamines come in. Alright? That's where your catecholamines come in. So even for battle as well, war for example, assassin, okay? To prepare for the battle, 1 month before, all the preparation is all your cortisol and thyroid hormone. Prepares you for the battle. During the battle is catecholamines. So now you understand the difference between the stress hormone. So now, today, primarily, what are we going to learn is how thyroid hormones prepare our body for stress. And what happens when there is too much or too little of these thyroid hormones. Okay? So essentially, we are going to learn thyroid emergencies today. Okay, now. So first and foremost, your body needs to detect stress. So what is the cause of stress? It could be emotional, physical. You want to buy a handbag, your expensive handbag, Gucci handbag. You ask your boyfriend to buy for you. Your boyfriend go to Pasar Siti Khadijah and buy $10 handbag. Stress or not? Stress. So you need your external input. At the same time, there are other causes of stress as well. Okay? Infection can cause stress, correct or not? Why infection causes stress to your body? When a pathogen enters your body needs to fight. Does your body fight for free? No, it needs resources. It needs glucose. It needs all the energy it can get to power up the bone marrow to produce all the white blood cells. It needs to power up the T cells, B cells, and all these require energy. It needs to increase the temperature to cause fever, hoping that in this high temperature, it can slow down the progression of the pathogen. And at the same time, this high temperature will make our immune system work better, more efficiently. And to increase the temperature, also need energy, increase metabolism. So, when there is an infection, there is a demand for energy. Where does this energy come from? So, this energy means your body has to increase its metabolism to produce more energy. Understood? So, infection. What else besides infection? What other medical conditions can cause stress? Any myocardial infarction, alright? The heart suddenly gets affected, alright? The heart suddenly goes through an infarction, ischemic event. It needs to increase its contractility, its cardiac output. So your body goes into a change into stress. To cope with the increased stress, the body goes through changes so that the heart can pump faster and work more efficiently. Because right now the heart is not working efficiently due to certain problems, conduction problems, ischemic problems and so forth. Understand? Okay? So it may be emotional, it may be from the cerebral cortex, it may be because of your heart not functioning properly, or it may be because of infection, so many reasons. But the moment the stress from multiple levels, okay, the stress from multiple levels are detected, from multiple sources, input is detected, alright, it will trigger our hypothalamus. Our hypothalamus is our body's receptor. It can detect, okay, this guy is really stressed, okay, he's really stressed, his exam is coming up, he messaged his girlfriend, 2-3 pages, and he got back a K as a response, right? So he's stressed. Let's prepare his body for more stress, okay? So what the hypothalamus does is the hypothalamus will produce thyroid releasing hormone, which will act on the pituitary. Okay, which part of the pituitary gland? Anterior or posterior? Anterior. So this guy, hypothalamus, will produce thyroid releasing hormone, which will knock on the door of the anterior pituitary, and the anterior pituitary will produce thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay? So this thyroid stimulating hormone in turn will go to the thyroid gland. How does our thyroid gland look? It looks like a shape of a flower. Colloid and follicle. Alright? The cellular lah. Cellular. Okay? So you have the follicles and you have the colloid. Okay? This is a classical thyroid gland, histopathologically. Now, histologically. When TSH comes, there is a receptor on the thyroid gland, on the follicle. And this receptor, TSH will bind to this receptor and in turn stimulate the follicle to produce two very important things. Okay? How does it stimulate? It will stimulate the nucleus via genome activation, mRNA, protein production. It will produce two very important proteins. Number one, it will start producing these iodine pumps. Okay? Iodine pumps. And secondly, it will start producing a lot of enzyme, a very important enzyme known as thyroid peroxidase. Thyroid peroxidase. And thyroid peroxidase is the most important enzyme, the MVP. The MVP of this thyroid gland is thyroid peroxidase, because thyroid peroxidase will later be in charge for the whole production, steps of production of the thyroid hormones. Okay, but there's only one problem here, one very significant problem here. This thyroid receptor is one of the most mangkuk receptors in the body. Yes, yes. If you can name one most foolish receptor in the body, is the thyroid receptor, this TSH receptor. This receptor causes a lot of problem for us. Okay, if you can get the award of the most mangkuk receptor, it will be this fella. Okay, yes. So why is this thyroid receptor so infamous? Few reasons. One, TSH can stimulate this receptor. Okay? Sometimes, when an antigen, sometimes our body produces antibodies. Correct? Our body produces antibodies to fight antigen. Correct? Okay. Unfortunately, sometimes our body produces antibodies to fight against our normal self. Alright? It causes harm to our normal cells in our body. These are known as autoantibodies. Alright? For no reason, our body suddenly says, you have been bullying me too much. It's time for me to fight back. So I produce antibody and try to kill you off. Alright? So these are called as autoantibodies. Okay. Now, when you learn hypersensitivity, there's type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4. In type 2 hypersensitivity, your body produces antibodies against your own body, right? Parts of your own body. So for some reason, our body starts producing antibodies against this receptor. Very commonly. I don't know, maybe this receptor looked at the immune system very funnily. Say, the immune system, I don't like the way you look at me. I think I'm going to produce antibody and I'm going to kill you. Alright? Okay? So, these antibodies, or in this case, autoantibodies, will be produced and will start interacting with the receptor. Will start attaching to this receptor, these autoantibodies, attach to this receptor, and try to destroy the receptor. Understand? But there is a problem. When this autoantibody reacts with the receptor, it does not just kill off the receptor. It hyperstimulates the receptor. Because this is not TSH. TSH will attach after a certain given number of time. TSH and the receptor will be either absorbed into the cell, destroyed, or released into the circulation. So TSH has got a time limit response to the receptor, but not this autoantibody. This autoantibody will attach itself to the receptor. In trying to destroy it, what it will actually end up doing is hyperstimulating the receptor. Because this autoantibody and TSH what they say is that it is identical in the configuration. So because of that, it stimulates the receptor. So what happens when the receptor gets stimulated continuously? Yes, you're going to have non-stop iodine pumps being produced, non-stop thyroid peroxidase being produced. And thyroid peroxidase, when it's produced in high numbers, is going to cause T3, T4 to be produced in abundance. And when there is not enough, when the juices of the gland has run out, meaning that the gland cannot cope, but there's continuous stimulation, what happens to the gland? The gland goes through hyperplasia and it becomes bigger. Increased vascularity, because all the glucose, all the energy needs to come here for it to function more. So there will be increased vascularity, more blood vessels to the gland. The gland will grow, become bigger, hyperplasia. Okay? So because of that, now you have a bigger looking gland and angry looking gland. Alright? So what is this condition called? Yes, what I just defined to you was Graves' disease. In Graves' disease, our body's antibody suddenly decided that this mangkok over here, alright, has looked at him funnily and decided to eradicate him. Alright? Alright, huh? Mangkok means plate, huh? Okay? So, what happened is that our body produces autoantibodies to destroy it, but instead of destroying it, it attaches itself to the receptor and hyperstimulates. And now causes a lot of T3, T4 to be released, causing what we call as thyrotoxicosis, which can even later lead to thyroid emergencies like thyroid storm, and at the same time the gland becomes big. The gland becomes big and cellular. Now, this receptor, the story does not end here. What are the other things you notice about Graves' disease? They have eye changes, right? All other thyroid diseases does not have eye changes. Except for Graves' disease, they can come with weakened eye muscles. The eye muscles are weak. They can come with ophthalmoplegia. They are unable to do all their ocular movements. Alright? And at the same time, they can have proptosis, eyes bulging out, and they also have lead lag. Why these eye changes occur exclusively only in Graves' disease and does not occur in any other thyroid disease such as thyroiditis, solitary thyroid nodule, does not happen, but only in Graves' disease. Why? This receptor is a mangkok. Yes, because this receptor is a mangkok. Why? These receptors, embryological origin, it shares the same embryological origin with the smooth muscles of the eye. So the smooth muscles of the eye shares the same embryological origin of the receptor, TSH receptor. So because of that, not only our autoantibodies recognize this receptor, but it also recognizes that there is the same sequence of these receptors' embryological origin in the smooth muscles of the eye. They are the same configuration. So our autoantibody not only attacks the receptor, but also attacks somebody else who looks like this mangkok. Yes. Okay? So it goes to the eye, attaches, and don't forget, antibodies, the moment they attach to a antigen, or in this case to our body, it starts attracting all the inflammatory cells, starts attracting neutrophils, macrophages, T cells, B cells. So when all these cells go there, they start destroying stuff, proteolytic enzymes, cytokines. They start destroying, it's a battle zone there. They destroy things there. And once they destroy things there, the muscles are broken down. That is why the patient cannot have movement. And because there's so much inflammation there, there's edema. And remember, the connective tissue around the eye is loose. So when there's edema, it will push our eye forward and causes the effect of proptosis. Okay? This is exclusive in the eye because the connective tissue is loose. Why? Because this is a protective mechanism so that when there is increased pressure, we don't become blind. We don't get an orbital compartment syndrome so easily because there's so much space as compared to our skin. Alright? If you get edema on your skin, you look shiny, beautiful. Isn't it? Isn't it? Huh? Shiny, tense, very beautiful looking skin. But not in your eyes. Huh? But that does not mean you go around asking for edema. No, huh? Alright. Okay. So now you see the problem. So what I just mentioned to you is type 2 hypersensitivity, Graves' disease. Alright. Now, so that's the problem with this receptor. Okay, Graves' disease. Second clinical application is this iodide pump. What iodide pump does is that it starts pumping iodine from the blood into the cell, thyroid cells, the follicular cells. Then this iodine later will be used for the production of the thyroid hormone. This iodine pump also is weird. When we talk about thyroid gland, there's so many weird things here. The first weird anomaly is the receptor. Alright? Anybody who can come and trigger this flaw. One more thing. Not just onto antibodies, no. There's also another idiot who can trigger it. You know who? Beta HCG. Beta HCG can also trigger the receptor. So you see, this receptor is a mangkok. It's not specific. Anybody who can come and trigger. Hey, you want to trigger? Come, trigger. Okay? Beta HCG also can trigger. That is why pregnant mothers, they come with, you can see that they come with goiter sometimes. Enlarged thyroid gland. Why? Because of this hyperstimulation. But usually it is it's not pathological, because the increase in the thyroid gland size probably is to increase the T3, T4 to cope with the demands of the fetus. Alright? Unless the mother has got the underlying hyper-functioning thyroid gland, then pregnancy can make it worse. She may go into storm. But if she does not have any underlying problem, usually they have increased T3, T4, but they will not present with symptoms of thyrotoxicosis. That is why when you see an increased thyroid gland in a pregnant mother, you just want to ask questions. You haven't encountered ingredients, so you want to ask questions. Whether, do they have any signs and symptoms of thyrotoxicosis? If they don't have, then usually just monitoring will do. If they have, then you have to consider taking the levels and starting a anti-thyroid medication. Because when the pregnancy goes further, more stress, more T3, T4, she can go into a thyroid storm. And this may affect her child as well. Okay? Interesting, right? Okay, now we go into the iodide pump. This iodide pump is also a crazy fella. How is he crazy? When iodine levels are low in our blood, for example, okay, people who don't stay near the sea, or we don't take enough iodide in our diet, our iodine is very low. When the iodine levels are low in the blood, this pump works super efficient. Maximum efficiency it will work when the iodine levels are low. Okay, very efficient. This pump will be very efficient when the iodine levels are low. But when the iodine levels are high, it actually inhibits this pump. So this pump will stop working if the iodine levels are high. Okay? In low, it will work. Okay? So what is this effect called? No, this is not negative feedback. This is known as the Wolff-Chaikoff effect. Wolff-Chaikoff effect. Alright? Wolff-Chaikoff effect, where high iodine level will inhibit the iodine pump. Wolff-Chaikoff. Alright? Okay. Now, why is this important? This is our body's defense mechanism. Because when there's too much iodine, you may overproduce T3, T4. So because of that, the pump will actually stop working when the iodine levels are high. Alright? When the iodine levels are low, you may have reduced T3, T4. So that is why the pump works at efficient level to pump in whatever iodine it can get to make sure that your body has enough T3, T4. There is a clinical significance to this. Do you all remember the tsunami in Fukushima? There was a break, the nuclear reactor, okay, was destroyed, and there was a radioactive poisoning. In a 10-kilometer radius around the Fukushima area, the nuclear plant, they evacuated everybody around the area, and what they did was they gave everybody potassium iodide. Okay? Potassium iodide. Why? Very simple. Whenever somebody is suspected of having radioactive poisoning, we give them high doses of potassium iodide, because when you get exposed to radioactive waves, these radioactive waves will attach to your iodine molecules in your body. Okay, your iodine in your body will get attached to this radioactive material. Then, when it goes into your thyroid gland, and then the thyroid gland produces this T3, T4, this T3, T4 will carry this radioactive material. And when they go into the cells and trigger growth, these radioactive waves is brought around, and this will cause widespread mutation. Okay? So to stop this widespread mutation, you need to stop the thyroid gland from taking in iodine that has already been exposed to radioactive waves. Alright? So how do you stop it? You need to make sure your iodine pump doesn't work. So it stops uptaking all the iodine that is exposed to the radioactive waves. How you do that? You give them potassium iodide. Falsely increase the iodine levels in the body. You increase the iodine levels in the body. When you increase the iodine levels in the iodine pump is inhibited. It will stop it will stop pumping the iodine that has already been exposed. So in that way, you get to reduce the chance of mutation in this person. Understand? So that is why patients who have been exposed to radioactive waves, we give them potassium iodide and eventually the radioactive material will be removed from the body, okay, without causing further harm. Interesting. That is why you need to give potassium iodide. Okay, so this settles the follicle part and TSH. Now, after we learn about TSH attaching to the receptor, stimulating the nucleus to produce iodide pump and also produce the thyroid peroxidase. Now let's move into the colloid and learn what thyroid peroxidase does. Okay? Now, thyroid peroxidase producing thyroid hormones is known as a process of OCH. Okay? How you remember? Oh, you know, last time I go to work in UK. Wow, very good, huh? UK, huh? Oh, very good, huh? Oh, UK. Ulu Kinta, Che. So, oh, Che. Alright? Oh, Che. Okay, so remember O Che. Okay. I don't know, that's the weird way I used to remember. Okay, O Che. So what is OCH? When we talk about whenever we talk about thyroid production, T3, T4 production, we always remember this OCH. So what is OCH? Okay, O is oxidation. So what is oxidation? Oxidation is the conversion of your iodine into iodide. Okay, because this iodine needs to be merged with a protein chain to form T3, T4. Thyroglobulin is your protein. It will merge with this iodine to form what we know as the thyroid hormones. Okay? So now, in order to start this oxidation, the iodine to iodide is done by so the iodine has already come in. So this oxidation to iodide will be done by the thyroid peroxidase. Okay. So then, after conversion to iodide, the next process is organification. Okay. The next process is organification. Okay, the next process, so oxidation, and the next process is organification. Okay. Okay. So iodine converted to iodide. So next is organification. So what is organification? Organification, because this now was oxidation. Iodide is a cation. Now this cation is going to be organified, meaning that this iodide is going to be merged with a protein. This protein is known as thyroglobulin. This thyroglobulin is produced by the thyroid gland to merge with the iodine to produce our precursor to form the thyroid hormone. So this is where T1 and T2 will be produced. Okay? Monoiodothyronine and diiodothyronine. What is this? This is the precursor to form your T3 and T4. And how these are produced? Thyroglobulin, okay, thyroglobulin, which is a protein, is merged with your iodine molecules and produce what we know as T1 and T2, monoiodothyronine and diiodothyronine. So the next process is coupling. Coupling, okay. Now we all love coupling, Correct. Okay. So what is coupling? Coupling is where this T1 and T2 will start merging with each other to form the thyroid hormone. Okay. So T1 will plus T1 and form T2. T2 plus T1 will form T3, and T2 plus T2 will form T4. Alright? And remember, all this is happening in the colloid. All this is happening in the colloid. All this process is mediated by your thyroid peroxidase. Okay? The main hero here is your thyroid peroxidase. So now, you know T3 eventually will go into the circulation. T4 will go into the circulation. But what will happen to T2? Can it go into the circulation? It's considered a factory reject. So what happens to it? It says bye-bye to his friends. Okay? Say, I'm sorry, I am not cut out for what it's meant to be. I am going to leave you today. Goodbye. Okay? So T2 will say a sad story, say bye-bye, and get destroyed. Broken down by the colloid and go through the coupling process again. Okay? Whereas T3 and T4 will happily leave the thyroid gland. So that is your coupling. But remember, T3 and T4 that is produced within the follicle are in the form of vesicles. They are in the form of vesicles. So they still cannot freely go into the circulation. So now from here, they need to go into the follicle and into the circulation. So how from the colloid, they move into the follicle and go into the circulation? They have already been produced after coupling and they are now in vesicles. So the next process is endocytosis, where it will get engulfed, okay, and get engulfed and moved into the follicle. Exocytosis means to release. Endocytosis means to absorb, makan. Yes. Exo is release. Endo is makan. Okay? Usually after makan you release, right? Okay. Alright. So now, endo makan. So it eats the vesicle and the vesicle enters the follicle. So now from the follicle, how does it release into the circulation? Hydrolysis. Okay? Hydro means water. Lysis, break the water. We're not talking about delivery here. Alright? But what we talk about break of water here is you break the vesicle and release the T3 and T4. And voila, it enters the circulation. The moment TSH leaves the receptor, then there is no more production of thyroid peroxidase. There's less production of the iodide pump. Okay? So that is why this process will occur as long TSH is there. The moment TSH leaves, it will stop. But if you have like this nasty flus, like the autoantibodies from grave disease, then they will continuously stimulate. And T3, T4 will keep on rising non-stop. Okay? Or even beta HCG will also continuously trigger the thyroid gland. Okay? So now you have T3 and T4 released into the circulation. Why am I going so detailed into here? Later, the treatment of thyroid problems will need you to know this step. Because you need to know at which step you need to intervene to save the patient. Okay, to stop the process of producing this T3, T4. And if you're going to give drugs, you need to know at which stage the drugs work. Alright? So that is why intimate knowledge of the production of thyroid hormones is a must to know for everybody. Okay? Especially in the medical field. Alright, so I just repeat one more time. OCHE, okay, which happens in the colloid, is the process in the production of thyroid hormones. So oxidation, iodine becomes iodide. Okay, organoglication, that iodide is merged with the protein thyroglobulin to produce T1 and T2, which is the precursor for the production of thyroid hormones. Then coupling occurs. T1 plus T1 will form T2, T2 plus T1 will form T3, T2 plus T2 will form T4. Unfortunately, T2 is a factory reject which will be broken down. T3 and T4 will be contained into vesicles. Okay, for further release later. Then endocytosis occurs. It engulfed and moved into the follicle. Then from the follicle, how it's released into the circulation? Hydrolysis, okay, of the vesicle, and T3, T4 is released into the circulation. Okay, now, when we talk about thyroid hormone, T3 and T4, which is much more in our circulation, T3 or T4? Okay. T3 is the active form of thyroid hormone, meaning that T3 acts on your cells. Okay? T3 is the one that acts on your cells I will explain a bit further later, to increase the metabolism. T4 does not act on your cells. T4 acts as a storage. 90% of your thyroid hormone is T4. Only 10% is T3. Why? Because if there's too much T3 and too much activation of the cells to increase metabolism, then you may go into thyrotoxicosis. So that is why T3 is kept in a small amount, 10%. T4 is 90% storage. If your body, for example, needs thyroid hormone urgently, you are sitting at home relaxing, suddenly you are thinking, oh my god, I took secret recipe, 1 cake today, I finished 4 slices of pizza, I need to run. Okay? So you feel guilty. So suddenly you put your shoes and you start running. Okay? Your body has no time to, oh, he's having stress, okay, let's go to the hypothalamus, okay, he's going to run in a short while, okay, produce. By the time he's produced, probably he's dead somewhere. Alright? Okay. So your body doesn't have time. So that is why your body is smart. He knows that you are an idiot who is capable of doing something very spontaneous at any given time. Alright? So because of that, the body keeps this T4 at 90%. The moment the body says, oh my god, he's doing something so against us, he's suddenly putting his shoes, running, what do we do? Okay, don't worry. We will get the hypothalamus to produce T3, T4, but at the same time, we use this T4 storage to produce more T3, to give more energy to his cells, to produce metabolism so that his body can cope and have extra energy for whatever crazy activity he wants to do now. How does it do that? T4 in the peripheral circulation is converted into T3. And this T3 will act on the cells. Okay? This process is known as your peripheral conversion of T4 to T3. Alright? And this process is mediated by an enzyme known as deiodinase, if I'm not mistaken. Alright? Deiodinase. So T4 is broken into T3 in the peripheral circulation. So your body can cope. Understand? So T3 only 10%, T4 as a storage for emergency 90%. And who gives negative feedback? Because when there's too much thyroid hormone, then they have to give a negative feedback to the hypothalamus, to tell the hypothalamus, look, you can stop producing TRH because we already have enough T3, T4 in the body. So who gives the negative feedback? It's not T3, it's T4. Because T4 is in the storage, not T3. T3 is actively being used. So T4 is the one that will go back to the hypothalamus and tell the hypothalamus, look, there's enough of me, don't need to produce so much. But when the T4 drops rapidly, the crazy idiot running non-stop, T4 is rapidly depleting. Then it will tell the hypothalamus, look, our master is crazy, he has finished our T4, please produce thyroid hormone ASAP. So then the process continues. Okay? Then this is our protective mechanism to negative feedback to make sure that our T4 does not overproduce. Our thyroid hormones are not overproduced. Okay? Now, let's move to the next process, which is how T3 affect the cells. Alright? Now we will learn at the cellular level how our cells are made to cope with increased stress. Now, this is our cell. T3 is here. T3 enters the cell. On the nucleus, T3 has got a specific receptor. It attaches itself to the receptor, unlocks a key, like a key to a lock, unlocks it, and releases genome codes, which will produce 3 very important proteins for the cell to cope with increased stress. So how the cells cope with increased stress? Okay, number 1, when a cell has to produce a lot of energy, what kind of protein that will be produced for the cell to cope with this, to produce extra energy? First thing is first, the cell starts producing a lot of mitochondria. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, correct? Meme, huh? Okay, mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It's true, even for us. This meme applies to us, alright? Because mitochondria is where your body will combine oxygen and glucose to produce CO2 and water. And this process produces 32 ATP. We have learned this before. And This process is exothermic, produces heat, right? So this ATP is very important. So how are we going to produce more ATP, more energy to cope with this demand that this master wants? We produce more mitochondria. So that's the first change the body cell goes through. Starts producing more mitochondria via this activation of the genome code within your nucleus, mRNA, ribosome, starts producing all this. So number one is increase in your mitochondria. Okay. Number two, what it starts doing? It starts producing. Yes, what kind of pump? Yes, it starts producing more sodium, potassium, ATPase. Alright? Please refer to my shock video. There I have mentioned very clearly what is sodium, potassium, ATPase during the shock video. You see, when the cells become bigger, there's going to be a lot of movement of electrolytes. Okay? There's going to be a lot of sodium, potassium. So when the cell becomes bigger, just like your house. When you have a small house, you need one security guard. But now, because the cell is increasing in size and number of mitochondria, your cell becomes bigger. So now you have from houseman, you become specialist. Your money also has become few times full. So from small house, you buy bigger house. But is the one security guard enough? Not enough. So from one security guard, you employ 4 to 5 security guard and walk around feeling like you are a YB. Okay, padahal specialist je pun. Tapi jadi YB dah. Alright. Okay. So same principle applies here. When the small cell becomes a bigger cell, more activity, it needs more security guards to manage the movement of electrolytes. So because of that, the body starts producing more sodium, potassium, ATPase to meet the demands. Because as I said before, the security is very important. You cannot allow movement of electrolytes simply. Otherwise, you're going to get into big problems. Okay? So, number 2 is increase your sodium, potassium, ATPase. And most important effect is number 3. It starts producing a lot of receptors on the cells. And these receptors are the one that's going to help you to cope with stress. And you know what is these receptors? These receptors are known as increase in the number of adrenergic receptors. What are adrenergic receptors? Remember your alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2. All these receptors react to sympathetic activity. Alright? But you see, people with increased thyroid activity, they don't have, people with increased stress, they don't have increased firing of the sympathetic activity. What happens is that the cell becomes more sensitive to sympathetic activation. Why they become more sensitive to sympathetic activation? Because the high number of alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1 and beta 2. And this is very important. Why? I'll give you an example, the heart. The heart has beta 1 receptors. When you are stressed, you need increased contraction of the heart, correct? So, in order to have increased contraction of the heart, you need more beta 1 receptors, correct? So how are you going to produce more beta 1 receptor on the heart? So thyroid hormones work on the heart, activate, produce more beta 1 receptors. So now with more beta 1 receptors, with the same amount of sympathetic activation, the heart is going to pump faster or not? Yes, so that is why patients with increased thyroid hormone, they are tachycardic because they got more beta 1 receptors. Understand? And how do you cope with stress for the peripheral blood vessels? During stress, peripheral blood vessels need to send the blood to the central circulation. So now you have more alpha 1 receptors. Alpha 1 will cause more vasoconstriction of the peripheral blood vessels to send the blood to the central, so that your heart can pump more blood to everywhere, so it can send enough demand of oxygen and glucose to the cells. Understand? So this is where the problem occurs. You imagine if the person has got too much thyroid hormones, too much adrenergic receptor, too much beta 1. Is it good? It's bad. You're going to go tachycardic, more tachycardic than seeing your girlfriend or wife. Okay? You're going to go very tachycardic, and this tachycardia may lead into a rhythmic problem. You may die. Understand? So that is why this is the part that kills us. This adrenergic receptor part. Too much adrenergic receptors, you go into hypersympathetic stimulation. But don't get this wrong. People always think that it's the sympathetic output that's increased in thyroid problems. No, it's not the sympathetic output. The cells are hyper responding to the sympathetic activity because they got too much adrenergic receptors. Understand? So let me repeat. This is very important for you to understand how thyroid. So T3 comes, as I say, T3 is the active form, T4 is the reservoir. T3 will act on the cells and produce 3 very important proteins. Protein number 1 is your mitochondria. Okay, powerhouse, produce more oxygen, produce more glucose, consume more oxygen and glucose, produce more ATP. At the same time, produce a lot of heat. That is why people with high amounts of thyroid hormone, they complain they feel hot all the time. Okay? Man's not hot, but he's hot. Okay? Okay? Man is hot. Okay? Because of thyroid hormone. Okay? Kalau man's not hot, it's probably hypothyroidism. Okay? Okay? So, you have this mitochondria producing heat, making him hot. Okay? Now, not only that, to cope with the increased cellularity, increased vasculature, increased size, you also need to monitor more electrolytes movement. So, increase in sodium, potassium, ATPase. And at the same time, number 3, it increases the number of adrenergic receptor, so the cell can cope with stress and gets response better under sympathetic stimulation. Okay? So during fight or flight, if your cells are already adjusted to cope with stress, you can hyper-respond. That is why athletes have more adrenergic receptors, because they have been practicing and training, coping with stress. The body has been primed to cope with stress. So during the acute event of the 100 meters race, probably Usain Bolt has got more adrenergic receptors than you. Alright? Because he's been training for so long to get that much adrenergic receptor. So he can run way much faster than you. Alright? Unless you kena kerja dengan kerbau lah, then I think you can beat Usain Bolt. Okay? Alright. Okay, now. All this done? Understand? Okay. After you finish this, now let's move into the pathological problems of thyroid hormone. When it functions too much, what happens? Okay? So after now, all understand? Okay, after this will be very easy. Kacang putih, white nuts. And don't forget, don't forget, thyroid hormone also has got a very important fourth function: stimulate growth. Remember, a growing person will need thyroid hormone to grow. Your cells, when it grows, need thyroid hormone for the energy and for the increase in the cellular size and all that. That is why a kid with low levels of thyroid hormone can cause them to go into cretinism. The growth can be stunted. Okay? So the fourth function also, thyroid is important for growth. Alright? Alright, now let's go into hyperthyroidism, thyrotoxicosis, and thyroid storm. These are the ones that you should be. So we will learn today about hyper-functioning thyroid. Hypo-functioning thyroid mixed edema coma, we will learn some other time. Okay? We have enough time today to learn this. What happens when the thyroid gland starts hyper-functioning? Now, what is the definition of hyperthyroidism? Hyperthyroidism, thyrotoxicosis, thyroid storm. All these three have increased T3, T4. Right? False. Correct lah kan? Hyper-functioning means you got too much T3, T4 in your body. Correct? Okay, now, in hypothyroidism, there's increase in T3 and T4, but no clinical symptoms. A patient has got no clinical symptoms. Patient won't have any symptoms. Patient has got hypothyroidism. Incidentally, you send a T3, T4 for pregnancy, comes back as increased T3 and T4, but patient has got no symptoms. Patient is totally fine. So you say patient has got hyperthyroidism, meaning the gland is hyperfunctioning, but patient has got no clinical symptoms. Okay? No increased T3, T4, no clinical manifestation. That is hyperthyroidism. Faham? How you differentiate it with thyrotoxicosis? In thyrotoxicosis, you have increased T3 and T4, but this time patient has clinical symptoms. Patient has clinical symptoms. or increased T3, T4 with clinical manifestation. Alright. When we talk about symptoms, what are the symptoms are we talking about? Actually, you don't need to memorize. You don't need to memorize what happens when somebody comes with thyrotoxicosis. All you need to do is from head to toe. What happens? Okay? So head, what happens? You remember that thin figure, that thin, sickly looking figure in your medical book? Betul? Can you remember? They say thyrotoxicosis. This is the picture you should remember. Alright? So from head, what happens? Come again? The hair? Anything about the hair? Loss of hair, huh? So I'm having thyrotoxicosis. Huh? But my body doesn't say so. Huh? I'm not thin, unfortunately. Alright? Okay. So you have loss of hair. Why loss of hair? Growth. He's already adult. Why loss of hair is very simple. Your body needs glucose, right? When there's increased energy consumption, when your body needs more energy, it needs more glucose, correct? Alright, now, when there's too much T3, T4, your body starts consuming all your glucose to produce energy, correct? Once this glucose is finished, where is it going to start taking glucose from? That is where gluconeogenesis occurs. First is glycolysis. It finishes your glucose in your body. Then it goes and finishes your glycogen in your muscle, in your liver. Glycogen stores 200 grams, very little. So once your glycogen stores finish, once your glucose store finish, then where it starts turning to? Gluconeogenesis starts breaking down. You wish it will start attack fat first, but no, our body does not break down fat first. You know who it breaks down first? Muscle, protein. Alright? Then only it moves to fat. Okay? See, our body also are very much against us. Fat is viewed as treasure. All your hard-earned muscles will be lost. Right? So, protein does not only come from the muscles, also come from other collagen. Collagen for your hair, all the collagen. Alright? Muscles, anywhere that has got protein will be broken down. That is why they have hair loss, because of the breakdown of collagen. Okay. Okay, after hair loss, what's next? Confusion. Somebody said confusion. What else? Psychosis. Sometimes they can even have hallucinations. Why all this occur? Why they have these mental changes? Sometimes some of them may even have schizophrenia. Sometimes, patients that come in with acute behavior, changes in behavior, you need to send a T3, T4. Why? Increased sympathetic activity can cause bizarre behavioral changes. Okay? When you have increased sympathetic activation, okay, when you see somebody angry, are you yourself when you're angry? Are you yourself when you're angry? You tend to do a lot of stupid things, right? Yes. You tend to say things you should regret or do things that you regret. Compulsive shopping, I don't know. Okay, don't know how you cope with anger. Alright? Alright. Somehow, when you are angry, you have increased sympathetic activation. And you have got no reasoning from your frontal lobe anymore. You are left with your primitive instinct. Why is this important? Because anger is a primitive reflex. We were talking about why in thyroid patients, sometimes they can present with psychosis, behavioral changes. Okay. You see, when you are angry, you don't have control over yourself. Why? Anger is a primitive response, meaning that when you're angry, it can only mean one thing: you're in the fight, flight. Either you fight or you run away. Alright? So anger will inhibit your frontal cortex. Just say a bull is rushing to you. You have increased sympathetic effect. Are you going to think that, maybe the bull just wants to come and say hi? Okay? Or maybe the bull will stop before. No, the reasoning goes out of the window, because that is done by your frontal cortex. Your frontal cortex is the one that messes you up, makes you overthink things, think this, you call him once and then he never answers back. He's out with some other woman lah. I know one. See, all that is your overthinking of your cortex. Okay, it goes out of the window the moment you go through stress. Okay, now when a hypovolemic patient comes, have you seen patient MVA when they present to you before? Have you seen them or not? When they are going through hypovolemic shock, they start screaming, very agitated, like they are not themselves, and sometimes they even start cursing, shouting, swearing. Have you seen that before? Okay, and then sometimes even I see people responding by punching them, okay, or scolding them, okay. Actually, they're not themselves. Why? They are going through hypovolemic shock. There's increased sympathetic activity response. So because of this increased sympathetic activity, they are as if in a heightened stage, just like they are angry. And that time reasoning goes out of the window, they'll start eliciting all sorts of behavior. I've even had a patient who came with acute psychosis, ended up to be hypovolemic shock. Alright? Okay? So in this case, what happens is that in thyrotoxicosis, the central nervous system has got a lot of adrenergic receptors. And the moment there's too much adrenergic receptor, they will start going to increase sympathetic activation. And because of that, they start having all these symptoms. The worst still is, I've even seen patients coming in, hallucinations, psychosis, delirium, all sorts of psychiatric behavior because of this thyrotoxicosis. Some of them can present exclusively with these behavioral changes. That is why you will need to check your T3, T4. Alright. So, behavioral changes, what else? In the chart. Next change is increase in the temperature. Why do they have high temperature? Because of the heat. Increased metabolism, produce more heat. So they have high temperature. Okay? So that causes them to have high temperature and causes them to have heat intolerance. Okay? They will prefer to go to snow compared to our place. Right? Unfortunately got no snow here. Alright? Okay. Now, okay, so what's the next symptom? Come again? Tachycardia. You can tell me why tachycardia. Why tachycardia? Increased beta-1 receptor. Good. You all are learning very fast. Okay, what's next? Do not memorize these symptoms. You can work it out head to toe. Alright? What else? Yes, palpitation means awareness of your increased heartbeat. So they will come with palpitations. Okay? What else? In the peripheries. Okay. Sweating because increase of your temperature, your body needs to throw this heat away. Alright? Very high temperatures can denature your enzymes, you may die. So they start sweating to throw this heat away. So they can come with sweat. Alright. What else you mentioned just now? Why they have tremors? You see, our muscles have what we call as the Golgi tendons. Golgi apparatus, Golgi apparatus. Golgi apparatus is within our muscle. Okay? Golgi apparatus is within our muscle. What stops us from... Okay, when you want to do a work, for example, I'm holding this pen. What stops me from having tremors is because there is Golgi apparatus embedded within my muscle. This Golgi apparatus will tell my central nervous system how much grip I need to contract or to release, and this Golgi apparatus continuously will give feedback to my central nervous system, and my central nervous system, because our central nervous system, especially the corticospinal tract that controls our muscle, always tends to overfire. Alright? The coordination of this muscle movement is done by your alpha motor neurons. Alpha motor neurons come down from the brain, they are inhibitory. Remember, corticospinal, although they activate your muscle movement, there is a activation of a muscle movement, but it cannot coordinate. Sometimes you may have too much movement, too little movement, you may have tremors. So what coordinates our muscle movement is actually the alpha motor neuron, which is an inhibitory pathway that comes from the brain, which regulates your muscle movement. Okay? So activation of the muscle movement is done, but the inhibition, meaning to coordinate how much movement, too little, will reduce or increase, is done by your alpha motor neuron. Alpha motor neuron is inhibitory. And how this communication occurs is via your Golgi apparatus. Okay. Unfortunately, Golgi apparatus has got a receptor on it. And the receptor on it is beta-2. Alright? Golgi apparatus has got an adrenergic receptor on it. And it's called beta-2. When a thyroid patient has got more beta-2 receptors on the Golgi apparatus, correct? Correct. So now, when there is sympathetic activity, increased sympathetic activity because of this beta-2 receptors, Golgi apparatus will become inhibited when beta-2 is activated. Meaning when there is increased beta-2 activation, increased sympathetic activation, Golgi apparatus is inhibited. So now, can the muscle give feedback to the brain? The brain lost information about the muscle. So now the contraction is overfiring. There is no more alpha motor neuron. The brain doesn't know how much contraction is happening because there's no more information coming. So the brain is unable to inhibit the extra movement via your alpha motor neuron. Because of that, you have tremors. You go for exam, you get tremors or not? Why you get tremors? Increased sympathetic activity, activation of this beta 2, and loss of information of this Golgi apparatus to your central nervous system. Interesting, right? First time you're doing all this, I know. Isn't it? It's so interesting to know. So when patients come with tremor in the emergency department, having other symptoms like sweat and all that, you have to think. Tremors, patient could have increased sympathetic output. Probably it could be thyroid, or probably he's just nervous to see you. Okay, because you look scary and you're not smiling. Alright? Okay? Alright. So that is why they come with tremors. Okay? Because of the Golgi apparatus. High activation of beta 2, loss of feedback to the brain unable to inhibit via alpha motor neuron. Okay? What else? Come on. What are the symptoms? Diarrhea. Okay, in the peripheries, we have not finished that. They have proximal myopathy. Proximal myopathy. The muscles of the peripheries, okay, are lost. You tell me why. It's recording, right? Recording, huh? Okay. You tell me why. Because of catabolism. Because of catabolism, for sugar, gluconeogenesis, muscles are broken down. So they will have what we do when you sit and then you ask them to stand, they cannot stand. Why proximal myopathy? Muscles are broken down because not enough glucose. Too much demand for glucose. Okay? Okay, what are the symptoms? Diarrhea, because of increased metabolism. Increased heat can stimulate diarrhea. What else? What else some more? In the peripheries. You always check the pulse for what? Patients with thyrotoxicosis. Not academic fantasia, but atrial fibrillation. Okay. Why you check for atrial fibrillation? Why is it when we mention thyrotoxicosis is almost synonymous with atrial fibrillation? Always we check, patient's pulse is irregular. Why? Why they are so susceptible to atrial fibrillation? I'll explain to you today. Okay, a class of discovery. Medicine is interesting actually. Medicine is very, very interesting. It's just that I don't know what happened throughout the process in your life. I think it just gets killed off. Alright? Alright. Okay, this is the SA node. And then you have your AV node, goes down, Purkinje fibers. Here, alright. Okay? So, SA node is the specialized myocardial cell for conduction. You also have other myocardial cells here as well. Remember, the myocardium, any cell can be a conductor. But usually they leave the conducting to the specialized myocardial cell, which is the SA node. Okay. Now, when the cells, all the cells are continuously exposed to thyroid hormones. So you have increase in size, increase in cellularity. The size increase, so now what happened? All these myocardial cells here become bigger. They fight the boss lah. Hey, we big already, you know now. You small, you want to conduct, I also want to conduct. Then this flow, so I also become big, I also want to conduct, all fighting on who want to conduct. So what happened? SA node is lost his captain already. Okay, the captain is lost. Mutiny. They throw away the captain. So now the SA node cannot fire anymore. These big flows have taken over. Why they became big? Because of the thyroid hormone, increased cell size. So when they become big, they fire. So they all keep firing. So they all can produce a QRS? No, they all can produce a QRS. But are they good as a conductor as SA node? They are not good conductors as SA node. They are big, they talk a lot, but they can't do work properly. Okay? Sound familiar? Okay? Alright. Okay. Alright. So now, they all fire at different times. But they are not as efficient as the SA node. SA node, when it fires, can produce a P wave. These fellas cannot produce a P wave. But because they're firing at different times, that is why you see the ECG rhythm is irregular. Because at this stage, maybe this flow is firing. At this stage, another flow firing. But they all don't have P waves. Because they are inefficient atrial contractors. They are inefficient as the SA node. So that is why you have this irregular rhythm. Okay? Another very important thing about the heart. Yes, they become palpitation. Because of this, and also tachycardia because of this increased beta 1 receptor. But a patient who is thyrotoxic left for a long time untreated, can develop heart failure. Why? Patient sometimes, when comes in with thyrotoxic symptoms, you also have to assess whether the patient has got symptoms of heart failure or not. All your paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, orthopnea, okay, all this fluid, okay, you have to assess. Patient has got heart failure. Why in long-standing thyrotoxic patient, they can present with heart failure? Very simple. I'll give you the explanation now. The heart is forced to work hard for a long time. Correct? Tachycardia, tachycardia, tachycardia. Correct? And on top of that, T3, T4 keeps producing a lot of adrenergic receptor to the heart. Correct? And remember, the heart cells are continuously exposed to this T3, T4. So the cells of the heart, say this is the myocardium, will end up going hypertrophy and dilatation. Understand? Because of this continuous stimulation of the T3, T4, alright, the cells cannot cope, so they start going through hypertrophy and dilatation. Alright? So if we are talking about skeletal muscle, good. Hypertrophy and dilatation become bigger. Oh God, skeletal, become an incredible Hulk. Okay? But the heart, unfortunately, hypertrophy and dilatation works against it. It becomes worse. Why? When the heart goes through hypertrophy and dilatation, it becomes bigger. But does it become more powerful? It doesn't become more powerful. What happens is, from a normal sized heart, okay, you now have a bigger sized heart, and it is not more muscular, it becomes more floppy. And remember, Laplace law, pressure is inverse to volume. Now when you have increased volume, pressure will drop. It just basically means when something becomes bigger but more floppy, can it produce more pressure? Volume lagi besar, bigger volume, the pressure becomes low. So the heart dilates, becomes bigger, but unfortunately the heart does not become dilated hypertrophy, become a bigger, stronger, more solid heart. No. It becomes dilated, bigger, and becomes floppy. So it's unable to generate enough pressure for cardiac output. So eventually they develop cardiac failure. Understand? So they will come to you with cardiac symptoms. In this case, we call it as thyrotoxic dilated cardiomyopathy. Cardiomyopathy. Right? So remember, when patients come, you suspect thyroid disease, please examine the heart as well. They could have an enlarged displaced apex beat, increased JVP, look for signs and symptoms of heart failure, especially long-standing thyrotoxic patients. How? You know how, T3, T4 continuously stimulate, torture the heart cell, the heart hypertrophy dilate until one time he said, I give up, I cannot cope with this anymore, and just fails on you. Alright? What are the symptoms? So they can present heart failure, they can also present with atrial fibrillation. You know why now, atrial fibrillation. Anything else? Daripada situ? They can also present with pretibial myxedema. Betul? Kan? Why? The protein gets broken down. Ada kan situ pretibial myxedema? Ada kan? There is pretibial myxedema. Why pretibial myxedema? When you press the shin, you usually check for heart failure, you press the shin, right, to see whether there's pitting edema. In these patients, they develop non-pitting edema. Alright? Why non-pitting edema? All the protein that's broken down forms a mucin deposit in the legs. They form a deposit there. All the collagen breakdown, protein breakdown forms a mucin deposit there. And when you press, it is non-pitting. So non-pitting edema will tell you that this could be a thyrotoxic. I actually diagnosed a thyrotoxic patient just by non-pitting edema. Because patient had very subtle sign. Very, very subtle. A bit angry, and then they referred to us because she was having failure symptoms. When I examined her and did a history taking, she didn't really have history to suggest failure because she had no ischemic heart disease, nothing. She did say that she had some anger issues, but something told me when I pressed the legs looking for signs of heart failure, it was a non-pitting edema. Then it triggered. Then I examined some more, then I realized she had other subtle thyroid signs. Then sent for TT4, came back as positive. And then started thyroid treatment, she became fine after that. Okay? She started having signs of early failure. This is why a good clinical suspicion is very, very important. You must have a broad picture. And whenever somebody refers to you, tell you this is heart failure, don't terima bulat-bulat. Retake the history, do again the physical examination. Understand? That is why I never say known case off. I always believe other doctors could be wrong. I always say was diagnosed. When come to me, go through a different criteria altogether. I will assess. I will not follow other people. Understand? Because especially in the ED, a lot of labeling happens. Patient comes from periphery, they say, oh, this patient like that. But then periphery, they're busy. They don't have time to assess. So you must take a short history, examine, and come up with your own assessment. Understand? Imagine if I didn't discover that this patient was actually a thyroid problem. Don't know how long she's going to end up being labeled as heart failure with nobody checking the T3, T4, and then eventually she will develop irreversible heart failure. Alright, I'm not trying to say I'm a hero. All I'm saying is that if each one of y'all can be the same. Have very high suspicion, clinical suspicion. When people say heart failure, non-pitting edema, something is wrong. Okay. Now, done, huh? Okay. So, when patients come with the symptoms I told you about just now, then you say that this patient is thyrotoxicosis. Increased T3, T4 with clinical symptoms. Is it an emergency? Not really. Need to treat? Yes. Because otherwise you will develop complications later. So, if you are in the periphery or you're in the clinic, and if you want to, you see a patient comes with symptoms, you take a history, you examine him, and you say, yes, this patient has got symptoms of thyrotoxicosis. You still cannot start treatment yet. You need to send an urgent T4 TSH, T4 TSH, wait for the results to come back. If the result says it's increased, then start treatment. Okay? Very commonly, we start carbimazole, PTU, something that can inhibit the thyroid peroxidase. So patients will, and then follow up the patient to check his at least 6 monthly of his T4 TSH. Alright? Clear? Okay. Now we go to the dangerous one. The life-threatening one. So, hyperthyroidism, increased T3, T4, no clinical manifestation. Thyrotoxicosis, increased T3, T4 with clinical manifestation head to toe. Remember, when you assess a patient, thyrotoxicosis, assess head to toe. Alright? Okay, once you assess head to toe already, finish, then you go to, don't forget, for female, they can sometimes present amenorrhea. For hypothyroidism. Don't forget that. Sometimes menorrhagia pun boleh. I'm not sure. Most of the time it's amenorrhea. Okay? So also that history is important. Okay. Now, when you go into thyroid storm, it's increased T3, T4 also. Increased T3 and increased T4. But this time, it's not just with clinical manifestation. This is life-threatening because now they present to you with a adrenergic crisis. That's it. Crisis because of the sympathetic stimulation. When there's too much of sympathetic stimulation, the sympathetic stimulation is life-threatening. That is when you call a thyroid storm. How you suspect somebody comes to you got thyroid storm? We have a triad. That this patient comes to you most likely with this kind of symptoms, they have thyroid storm. Thyroid storm, you have to triage the red zone and start treatment immediately. Now, how do you suspect that this patient has thyroid storm? We have a triad. Okay. Number one is fever with temperature more than 40. Temperature more than 40, we have to suspect this could be thyroid storm. Next, okay, fever. Next is tachycardia. Okay, heart rate sometimes can be more than 160. Tachycardia that is not disproportionate to the temperature. Because when your temperature is 37, your base heart rate is 80, every degree of temperature that goes up will increase your heart rate by 10. So if you're 80, temperature is 37, when you go 38, your heart rate from 80 should go up to 90. Alright? Then 39, 100. 40, 110. But if you come with a heart rate of 160, so this is disproportionate to your temperature. Correct? Once disproportionate to your temperature, it means that most likely this patient, fever, temperature more than 40, heart rate disproportionate to the fever, most likely could be having thyroid storm. Of course, the history is important lah. Okay. And don't forget, the last one is altered mental state. Altered mental state can mean so much. Can mean patient sometimes can come drowsy because of hypovolemic shock. Patient can come with hypovolemic shock. Sometimes can even come with psychotic, heightened state. As long as the altered state, the mental state is altered. So if patient comes with altered mental state, tachycardia disproportionate to temperature, heart rate more than 160, and the fever, temperature more than 40, then you can say that most likely this patient is having thyroid storm. But unfortunately, patients who come to us don't come with these perfect symptoms. Okay? So that is why now we are going to learn how to manage somebody who comes with a probable thyroid storm. Okay? So this is where kita guna the principles of management. Have you all seen my DKA videos? Okay, thanks for the honest answer. Okay? Please see my DKA videos, because in my DKA videos, I do talk about principles of management there. Okay, so another 10 minutes we'll finish it. Let's very quickly talk about principles of management. Why principles of management? Patient is not going to come perfectly in front of you. I've got thyroid storm, help me. When patient comes to the ED, last in your mind you'll be thinking thyroid storm. Correct? So you need to have a broad approach into thinking what this patient could have. Understand? So I'm going to teach you today principles of management, and please apply it when you see patients in the ED. Number one, principles of management is patient come to red zone, patient very tachycardic, sweating, altered mental state, heart rate 160. The triage officers call you, say patient very tachycardic, 160, patient temperature 40, patient is, assume you don't know lah, what is this patient about. So where are you going to triage this patient? Red zone. So you want to resusc and stabilize first. Principles of management, you do not bother about the diagnosis yet. You want to make sure he's stable to move to the next step. So in this case, when patient comes to the A&E, you triage to the red zone. Immediately when he comes, you assess your airway, ABCDE. Okay, airway, what do you look for? Can the patient breathe or not? If the patient is very tachycardic, cyanotic, what are you going to do? You give oxygen also. What is next? Intubate lah, tunggu apa lagi? Patient so respiratory distress. Not bagi ni, bagi tu, intubate. You have to intubate. Intubate, stabilize him. So at least once he's rested, then you can slowly come up with what is wrong with him. Alright. If patient comes tachypneic but patient is fine, you can give high flow mask. Alright. If patient is very tired, you see patient is so exhausted, or sometimes acidotic breathing, then don't wait any longer, intubate, because otherwise patient collapse, you're going to have a hard time. Alright? So please assess the airway that time. If you feel that the patient needs to be intubate, no questions asked. Right? If you think the patient can hang on, then hang on, give high flow mask, see how the patient is. So airway assessment very important. Next is breathing. What is breathing? You want to see the type of breathing. Is it a small breathing, Shane-Stokes breathing? Can he cope or not with his breathing? He says SpO2 okay or not? Oxygenation okay or not? Not okay? Intubate. Alright? If you can cope, then maybe you want to try CPAP or BiPAP, doesn't matter. But make sure this is stable first. A lot of times I see patients, they go into management, DKA, patient count. Want to give fluid lah, want to give... Patient so tachypneic. Patient conscious level already poor. Unable to talk to you. Answering in phrases. And on top of that, you want to give the other management. Do not bother about the management. Restart, stabilize first. Otherwise, you go and start the management, patient collapse. Understand? You must resusc and stabilize first. ABCDE. Alright? We started talking also ABCDE. Come to medical school also ABCDE. Until you die also ABCDE. Understand? Okay? So, airway. Protect the airway. Make sure the airway is secure. Make sure the breathing is adequate. Make sure the breathing is secure as well. Then next, go to circulation. Put 2 large bore IV granula. Start fluid. Send your blood. At the same time, you have to see the blood pressure. If the blood pressure is low, this patient, 80 or 40. Remember, thyroid storm patients, they can sweat to death. Because they can sweat until they lose so much volume. Increase sympathetic activation, what? I've seen patients become hypovolemic shock because of sweating. So when the blood pressure is low, patient is very tachycardic, what are you going to do? You need to run fluids. And remember, the sugar is low as well. So maybe you want to run the fluid, you want to replace with dextrose. Yes. Run fluid, replace with dextrose. You want to use dextrose saline, doesn't matter. Resusc, make sure there's adequate volume. Bring the blood pressure up. Then you can do a later management. This is important. Bring the blood pressure. If the blood pressure still doesn't go up despite your fluids, then you may want to consider, if you have already ruled out causes of bleeding, you may want to consider starting your inotropes early. Alright. Get the patient out of shock immediately. Don't worry about other things. Stabilize first. Otherwise, you won't even have a patient to work with. Right. Next, disability. Very quickly assess the conscious level. Look at the pupils. It could be something else we're missing. Alright. We just want to make sure that could it be a neurological event. E, exposure and environmental. Make sure patient has got hypothermia or not. If the temperature is high, you want to cool the patient down. Alright? So how you want to cool the patient down? Maybe you want to do tepid sponging. Do what it takes to bring the temperature down. Because if the temperature goes very high, patient may die due to complications of hypothermia. Understand? So remember this. Apply this to all your patients. Doesn't matter in the ward or A&E. When patient comes, first time you see the patient, assess this first. All this stable, then you move to the next step. What is the next step? Next step is establish diagnosis and focus investigation. Okay? I'm talking very general here. Because why? Patients succumb, you're not going to know it's thyroid storm, no? Alright? How you establish diagnosis? Focus history and focus physical examination. This is where the magic happens. Take a good history. So from there you ask history. Pakcik ni, what illness do you have? Or you ask from the family members. Oh yes, previously he was a thyroid patient. He used to have goiter. He used to have goiter. And then they used to give him medication. He was on medication for 6 months and then he stopped his medication. Alright? He stopped his medication. So then at home, he developed fever and then he suddenly became very delirious and then he started becoming very tachypneic and tachycardic and we brought him to the A&E. So that self tells you from the history. Okay, this history, patient come complaining of fever, palpitation, okay, and what else? Shortness of breath. Okay, fever, palpitation, shortness of breath. So from here, although the history tells you most likely it could be thyroid storm, very likely patient could be a thyroid storm because patient is a previous, but you need to have other differential diagnoses as well, at least 5. Because remember, there are other things that can cause fever, palpitation and shortness of breath. Don't be fooled because of the thyroid storm only. Understand or not? Don't get fixated to one diagnosis. So what are the other things that can cause fever, palpitation and shortness of breath? Pneumonia. You want to ask whether the patient just came back from Makkah or not? Could be MERS-CoV, isn't it? So you want to ask pneumonia or not? What else? Maybe heart failure, acute heart failure. Very good. What else? 2 more. Remember, if you're not sure, always go to your differential diagnosis. Vitamin, ABCDE. If you're not sure, until today I still use this. If you're not sure of the differential diagnosis, when patient comes with the presenting complaint, chief complaint of fever, palpitation, shortness of breath, besides thyroid storm, you need to have other differential diagnoses to think. Then go by your algorithm to know whether you are covering all the aspects of the other differential diagnosis. V is vascular. Could this be a vascular problem? I, infection. We already covered. Could be pneumonia. Okay. T, trauma. Okay. A, autoimmune. M, metabolic. I, iatrogenic. N, neoplasia. A, alcohol. B, behavioral. C, congenital. D, drugs. E, endocrine. Okay. Metabolic means hyper K, hypo K, hypercalcemia, hypocalcemia. This endocrine is all your thyroid and all that. Okay. So from here, endocrine. Yes. Probably infection. Okay. Could it be neoplasia? Lung CA. Fever, shortness of breath. Could it be lung CA or not? In a 60 or 70-year-old patient. Probably it could be lung CA, you don't know. Okay, it could be lung CA or could be TB. Alright? So please come up with this differential diagnosis. So once you get the history, then you want to ask the other things. Did this come back from Makkah or not? Is there any symptoms of failure at home or not? Is there orthopnea, PND and all that? Okay? Is there any night sweats? Is there any night sweat, acid sweating, any exposure to previous TB patients or not? Okay? Does he have any history of smoking? Get a proper history. This is what I mean when you take a proper history with differential diagnosis, so that you know you're not missing something. If not, the previous history of thyroid illness is going to be a red herring that may lead you from the proper diagnosis. Understand or not? This is how you take a history. So once you take a history, you do a focus PE. Focus PE, you examine the patient. At the same time, thyroid storm, what are you looking for? Physical examination. You want to look for signs, symptoms of shock. Patient could be in shock. So remember head to toe assessment of shock? I taught you all, right? Isn't it? The mental state, all your peripheries and all that. So please, okay, examine. At the same time, you want to look for signs of thyrotoxicosis as well. AF, atrial fibrillation. You want to see whether there's any proximal myopathy, any eye changes or not, okay? Any ophthalmoplegia, you want to examine for that as well, okay? To tell you that this patient could have thyrotoxicosis or not. Next, pneumonia, you want to examine the lungs. You want to listen for any crepitations or not, any cough scraps. Acute heart failure, you want to look at the heart, whether its apex beat is displaced or not. The JVP, whether there's pleural effusion or not, ascites or not, okay? Pedal edema. TB, you want to look for any lymph nodes, okay? Any clubbing, alright? Lung CA, also you want to see whether there's any wasting, any lymph nodes, okay? Any findings in the lungs or not. So, if you have the differential diagnosis, then when you do the physical examination, you'll be looking out for it. Understand? So this is how is your approach. Finish? Focus investigation, bills. B is bedside. Bedside. Bedside, A, B, C, D, E. A, ABG. B, bedside ultrasound. C, capillary blood sugar. D, dipstick. E, ECG. Okay? Bills, B-I-L-S. You never heard of this before? Okay, kita yang kurang mengajar, kita yang kurang mengajar. Okay, alright. Okay. Betul lah, kurang mengajar. Okay. B, ABCDE. Whenever a patient comes, you have to run by your focus investigation via these bills, BILS. Okay. B is ABCDE, bedside. ABG, check the ABG. B, ultrasound, look at the IVC size. C, capillary blood sugar, check, because remember, thyroid patient sugar will be low. You need to replace the sugar. D, dipstick, you want to see whether it could be a urinary infection or not. E, ECG, do an ECG immediately. You want to see whether there's any changes or not. Sometimes patient may have myocardial infarction, which is stressing the patient up, causing the thyroid hormones to raise. Okay. I, imaging. Imaging such as chest x-ray, pelvic x-ray, whatever x-rays that's needed. In this case, at least a chest x-ray, because you need to know whether the patient has got cardiomegaly or not. Right? Always remember, investigation, you need to explain why you're doing the investigation. L, lab. Full blood count. You want to see whether there's any leukocytosis. Okay? You want to see how's the hemoglobin. Okay? Patient could have bleeding and so forth. You want to look at the blood urine serum electrolyte. Remember, patient's sweat can be hypovolemic, reduced kidney perfusion. Patient may have raised urine creatinine. Patient may have acute kidney injury. Alright? Same time, I want to send the PT-INR as well, in case patient has any coagulopathy. Alright? S is specific. Specific to your differential diagnosis. Thyroid storm. Do you send T4 TSH? Usually no. It's a clinical diagnosis. Alright? Pneumonia. What do you send? Sputum culture. Blood culture if you suspect it is sepsis. Acute heart failure? Any specific test for acute heart failure? Not really. But usually in the ward or what, you can send your ANP or BNP. Natriuretic peptide. Betul? Okay? Lung, CA, CT scan. PTB, sputum AFB. That's how you run by your investigation list, so you don't miss anything. BILS, bedside, ABCDE, imaging, all your x-rays, ultrasound, CT scans, whatever. L, lab, your lab test, BUS, FBC, PT-INR, LFT, okay? And S is your specific to your differential diagnosis. Doesn't take too long to run by this process in the A&E when you clock patients, so that you don't miss anything important. Okay? Now, can you just look at the capacity? How much more capacity does it have to record? Huh? 19 minutes. Okay. Okay. Clear? Okay. So now, after established diagnosis and focused investigation, what is the next part? What's the next part? Treatment, which is divided into medical treatment and surgical treatment. Okay? For example, lung CA. Medical means chemo. Surgical means lung lobectomy. Alright? So in this case, after you establish diagnosis, do a focused investigation. Like in thyroid storm, when you examine, you will notice that, so the history is very suggestive. Patient got history of thyroid disease, was taking treatment, now defaulted treatment. And then patient had fever, cough few days ago, so there's infection, pneumonia. Increase the demand, but patient is not taking medication. So the stress will increase the T3, T4, patient most likely coming in with storm. Patient got alternated state, fever, and the tachycardia, heart rate more than 150. So most likely you're looking at a thyroid storm. Your investigation already done. Your blood you already sent. But remember one thing, thyroid storm is a clinical diagnosis. If you're not sure, patient does not have the classic triad, then there's such a thing called as Birch-Watowski criteria. Birch-Watowski criteria is a checklist based on the patient's heart rate, temperature, and then you come up with a score. Anything above 25 is impending storm, above 40 is confirmed storm. Alright? So you can use this Birch-Watowski criteria, above 25 you can start treatment. So that can also help guide us. Because remember, thyroid storm is not you cannot use investigation and diagnose it. It is a clinical diagnosis. So the moment you see patients got history of thyroid disease, coming with this kind of symptoms, Birch-Watowski is acceptable, or the clinical triad is there, you can decide to start treatment immediately based on a clinical suspicion. So now you say from your diagnosis and investigation, from your history, physical examination and investigation, overall you see the patient and you already stabilized him. Overall you see and you say, this is thyroid storm. I want to treat as thyroid storm. Okay? So thyroid storm, medical and surgical treatment. Do you want to give radioactive iodine there and then? Usually no, right? You want to treat the medically. Alright. So how do you treat patients with thyroid storm? Number one. Okay, remember this. Patient come with a heart rate of 160. What is the first thing you need to do? You need to bring down the heart rate. Why in thyroid storm patients, the first treatment that we want to do, of course, don't forget, first treatment is always resusc and stabilize. Give fluid, make sure the BP goes up. That is all under resusc and stabilize. But when you come to the specific treatment, the first specific treatment is to bring down the heart rate. Why? If you leave the heart rate that rapid so long, remember, our heart rate is divided into systolic and diastolic. In 1 second, systolic is only 0.2 seconds. Diastolic is 0.8 seconds. So our heart spends more time in diastolic and rather than systolic. Systolic is a short period. Now, our heart gives oxygen to the whole body during that 0.2 seconds. That 0.8 seconds diastolic is when our heart takes oxygen for itself. Coronary artery perfusion happens only during diastolic. So you see, the heart gives oxygen to everybody else first. Then he takes oxygen for himself. Be like your heart. So unselfish. Okay? Alright. Problem is when patient becomes very tachycardic, it does not eat into the systolic, because systolic is already that short. It will start eating up time in the diastolic period. So your diastolic becomes lesser and lesser and lesser as you become more tachycardic. There will come a time where the diastolic is so short that the heart is unable to have enough adequate coronary perfusion. You can actually develop ischemic event if you allow the patient to be tachycardic that long. That is why when patient come tachycardic, we are also tachycardic. Alright? We also have palpitations because we know that if you allow the patient to be tachycardic that long, patient may collapse due to a coronary event. That is why we need to bring down the heart rate immediately. So what do we usually use to bring down the heart rate? We use propranolol. We use propranolol for a few reasons. We use IV propranolol because, one, it will bring the heart rate down because it will block the beta-1 receptor. It is a non-selective. It will block beta-1 and beta. It will block, propranolol will block both, okay? Alpha and beta. Now, non-selective. So, not only that, propranolol will bring down the heart rate because it will block beta-1. It will also reduce the anxiety that the patient has. Because propranolol is an anxiolytic drug. It reduces the anxiety as well. And number 3, it also reduces the peripheral conversion of T4 to T3. Because in thyrotoxic patients, in thyroid storm, T4 is actively being converted to T3. So we reduce the peripheral conversion by giving propranolol. Propranolol is 3 in 1. Very good, 3 in 1 coffee. Okay. Number 2, what's the next step after you reduce the heart rate? You need to reduce the production of T3 and T4. Alright? So how you reduce the production of T3 and T4? You give something that will inhibit the thyroid peroxidase. Because remember, OCHE is thyroid peroxidase. So how you inhibit thyroid peroxidase? You give the two drugs that will inhibit thyroid peroxidase. Propylthiouracil or carbimazole. Carbimazole. Okay? So, propylthiouracil and carbimazole. Usually we give propylthiouracil for what reason? Around 800 to 1200 mg. Why? Because propylthiouracil, PTU, can also reduce the conversion of T4 to T3 in the peripheries. Okay? So we give oral PTU. The next step, also, to reduce the production of T3, T4, strategy number 2 is to inhibit the thyroid peroxidase. Strategy number 3 is to inhibit the iodine pump. So how you inhibit the iodine pump? You tell me now. Give more iodine. But there is a catchphrase there. You cannot give iodine before PTU. Because the thyroid is so angry, absorbing so much. If you give iodine first, it is not going to inhibit the pump. Because the thyroid is so angry, it's going to absorb all the iodine you give. That is why you need to inhibit the thyroid peroxidase. Make sure after 1 hour giving PTU, then only you give Lugol's iodine. So this time the gland will not use the iodine. It will inhibit the pump. So you, not only you inhibit PTU, 1 hour after that you give Lugol's iodine and inhibit the pump. Alright? So we inhibit the pump and also inhibit thyroid peroxidase. But remember, after 1 hour inhibiting thyroid peroxidase, then only we inhibit the iodine pump. Okay? Alright. So 1, 2, 3. The fourth strategy is reduce the peripheral conversion. Remember, we have already given propranolol, reduces T4 to reduces peripheral conversion. PTU also reduces peripheral conversion, but it's not enough. So in the fourth stage, we also give IV hydrocortisone, 200 mg QID, to reduce the peripheral conversion. Okay? That is the treatment that is needed. Okay? But please do not forget your principles of management. Start from the very beginning. Resusc, stabilize, ABCDE, clear. Establish diagnosis. Take a good history. Get other differentials. Examine him. Look for signs of shock. At the same time, look for other differential diagnosis findings as well. Investigation. Builds. Make sure you do the important investigation to guide you in your diagnosis. Come up with the diagnosis. Treat. Principles of treatment. Reduce heart rate. Inhibit thyroid peroxidase. Inhibit the iodine pump. And reduce the peripheral conversion. But it doesn't end there. What is the fourth in the principles of management? Complication. Complication of the disease and complication of the disease and complication of your treatment. Okay? What is the complication of the disease? The thyroid storm may progress and become worsened despite your treatment. So you have to anticipate. Patient may collapse. So you need to, patient's heart rate may go even further higher. So you need to anticipate all this. Patient may collapse, cardiac arrest. These are the complications. So you want to be ready for all these complications. Patient may go into hypovolemic shock. So you need to be ready for these complications. And if it occurs, you are prepared. So you keep your crash card there. Patient collapse, you know that you can protect the airway. Remember, anything can happen at any given time. So you must be prepared for the complication. Alright? Complication of your treatment. Okay? You are giving treatment as well. Sometimes your treatment may worsen condition. Okay? For example, you're giving fluid. Sometimes you may overgive fluid. Patient may go into overload. So you need to examine the lungs. Make sure there's no cracks there. Or you want to see whether the patient has got any signs of fluid overload. Understand? Always monitor your treatment. Always monitor the progression of the disease. Last and not least, number 5 is team management. You want to refer to medical. Get them to come down. Anesthetists to secure a bed in the ICU. Don't forget, team management is also family members. Call the family members. Explain to them why he has been intubated. Explain to them his diagnosis. Why he worsened today. Why we intubated him. Explain to him that this is what's happening. Currently he's stable and we are going to admit him to ICU for further monitoring. One part we always forget to do. Explaining to the family members. It's as equally as important as treating the patient. Understand? So don't forget. Complication, disease treatment, and then team management. Refer to the team, get them involved. At the same time, counsel the family members and address any issues they have. Understand? So that concludes our thyroid problems today, and I hope these principles of management will help in guiding you for how you approach patients in the A&E.